Hello, everyone, and welcome to this debut broadcast of In the Business, where we're going to talk about stuff that isn't specifically happening in the ring, but also that uh, involves everyone outside of the ring, events, uh, all the things you don't necessarily hear about, but people still have stories to tell. There's lots of input, and we're going to try to get into that and see if there's any interest in something like this. So today, our first guest for our topic, we're going to talk about, because it is that time, we're going to talk to Mr. Dash Bennett, Pro
Hello,
Wrestling.
sir.
How you doing?
Doing
Uh,
great.
our topic, because it's about that time of the year, we're going to talk about tax time promoters. You know the people, about the end of the year or so, beginning of the year, they take a look at what they're going to get back and they say, son of a bitch, it'd be awesome if I ran a wrestling show. And you know what? I'm going to spend my tax return and make it happen. How you
You know,
feel
I
about
feel
that?
I feel like you asked me to be your guest on this specific topic because I have a lot of history with one very infamous tax season promoter in our area, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about. But I think this goes beyond just the tax season of the people that get some money and think that they want to. Um, People that think they want to make money in pro wrestling, and one of the oldest adages that gets passed around is if you want to make $1 million in the wrestling business, especially as a promoter, the easiest way to do that is to start out with 2 million. It's not easy to make money as a promoter. Very few people do it successfully. Um, Not everyone does it the right way. And the people that do it the right way sometimes make money, sometimes break even, and sometimes lose their asses. But a lot of people, whether it's tax season or not, get this grand idea that they want to contribute to the business by putting on a show or starting a promotion, and they find out very quickly that they're in over their heads, and it can go one of two ways. Either they say, well, I learned my lesson, I lost my money, or uh, they uh, they sort of take that out on everyone else, and the people around them sort of feel those after effects, which again I'm sure we'll talk a lot about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is the adage. I mean, that absolutely had to be put in there. Uh, and you'll see that, like, sometimes it's good, like, like, sometimes it might be somebody that's already established, like, hey, it would be great. I'm going to get this extra money. I would like to put it into the promotion. Maybe we'll bring in a name. Maybe we'll invest in some new type of gimmick match or something. Or we're going to buy all the tables at Home Depot to throw people through all year long. Uh, but yeah, you're going to have a type of person that says, maybe with no experience, maybe has never done anything in the business at all. And of course, that ranges the different amount that they're willing to spend by state to state. As in Pennsylvania, we have the Athletic Commission. Not as bad in Ohio and non existent in West Virginia. But in Pennsylvania, you need a lot more to get started. Uh, Usually the sticker shock drives a lot of people away. But for those people that are committed to absolutely putting on a wrestling show, almost nothing can stop them but how much money they have to start or how much money they're willing to give up to start, regardless of what they end up with.
Yeah, and in Pennsylvania, yeah, there's the athletic commission, and that has kind of a high price to it. And very, very rarely will you see these tax time promoters actually invest in getting a license. It's very easy to rent someone else's license, and we've seen countless examples of that. You find someone that has a license, you pay them, you bypass that. You still have to pay for a doctor, you still have to pay for a ring, you have to pay for a building, you have to pay for a DJ, you have to pay for everything else that goes into the show, and maybe you pay the talent. Usually, you don't if you're a tax time promoter because, well, the house is light, brother.
And isn't it amazing? The one thing you really need for a wrestling show, uh, other than the ring, probably, the wrestlers, the actual talent of the show, are always the first ones, it seems, to always get the low end of that, you
Yeah,
know?
I So a promotion that I worked for in the early 2000s, I got to see the budget sheet at one point, and I think the highest paid person on the event by a significant amount was the DJ. I think it went. The DJ was up here, the ring announcer was here, and then the budget per wrestler was down here, almost non-existent. I think maybe the talent for the entire roster of wrestlers and referees and managers was probably the same as the DJ and ring announcer combined, which that always baffled me.
I mean, sometimes DJs, I'm not speaking specifically of any one particular DJ, but they don't just do wrestling shows. If you're a good DJ, you've got gigs all over, and usually they're a lot better at negotiating their prices because you got to have music. Absolutely everybody, it's like an industry standard at this point, especially if they have their own gear and everything to set up and do everything. And usually you look at that and say, absolutely, we need that. And a lot of times they want their money up front even before they walk through the door.
Yeah, and wrestlers, unfortunately, and this isn't speaking of everyone, but I think just in the general sense, don't have that same negotiating power. There's certainly more of a supply of independent wrestlers than there are the demand for them. So the promoters can pick and choose who they want to use, and maybe use the ones that aren't asking a lot of money. And there's also an issue of quantity over quality, where maybe a promoter doesn't want to spend the money on the wrestler that has a look, that has experience, that has national exposure, and they want to just fill their card with with guys that will work for the $5, the $10, or the guys that have little to no experience or little to no business being in the ring, period. Or in the case of tax time promoters, they're typically the ones that maybe will have those grand expectations, those grand ideas, and want to spend that money. They'll want to bring in the big names. They'll want to stack their card full of former WWE stars, guys that appeared on AEW Dark. They'll want to bring in legends. They'll make their show look as pretty as possible, thinking, oh, I'll recoup that money at the gate. It's very, very, very unrealistic that they will. And I think that comes with just not having that experience. When we're talking about the tax sign promoters, those are typically the ones that don't have the experience, that are just doing this because they have an influx of money and they think, okay, well, I want to do it myself. Again, this happens around the year, but someone that's been in the business, that maybe they've been a worker for a while, or they've been in some other non-wrestling capacity, they decide, you know what, I have a vision, I want to execute it. That's great. They'll probably approach it a lot more differently than someone that just kind of has the itch one day.
Oh, absolutely. So many excellent points you're bringing up. This is exactly why I asked you to be part of this.
Yeah, and I don't want to get out. I don't want to get too much off topic talking about these other aspects, because I know that we want to focus on the tax time promoters, or kind of the one shot promoters. But these topics really do blend together.
They do, especially you get a tax time promoter, and they look at it like a tiered system. So you got your names in here at the top, and then they filter through like, okay, license, ring, workers, and they're going to have a short list of people they absolutely want and people they can afford. And then there's probably, especially when you see some people on the lower end, especially a bunch of backyard groups that all got their tax return and decide that they're going to run, and then it's just all their friends. Because as we know in this business, the litmus to saying I'm a professional wrestler is sometimes just saying, hey, I want to be a professional wrestler. I got money to buy a ring, so now I'm a professional wrestler.
Yeah, I do. There are pros and cons to the states that require licenses, and I don't know that putting Pennsylvania on the license system to be a wrestler would necessarily solve all of the issues, because I think that there would still be ways around that. but I think that that might deter a lot of the groups that use guys that aren't properly trained and aren't trained at all. I think something just went viral maybe a week ago where a guy posted to Twitter that he just wrestled his first match and confessed that he trained for an hour before the event. And there are promotions around here that have been running for years and decades that have a roster of guys that look like they trained for an hour before the event.
And for a tax time promoter, those might be exactly the kind of guys they're looking for because they're going to be cheap. And a lot of times, these are the people with families like that absolutely can get them to say, "Will you come to my show?" And they'll go. Like for guys that have been in, it's like it's hard to get a lot of people they know, family members, to come and buy tickets. But these people, absolutely every single time, because they all have the same friends and family for a lot of them, would come in together like, all right, if you guys do this and you guys do that, you can be on the show. This sells more tickets, and hopefully this show will be a success. On nothing more than like I'm going to see him, which is may or may not be the definition of a draw, but at the same time, it's a little hollow.
Yeah, no, I absolutely know. Over the years, I can think of several examples off the top of my head where a promoter, I mean, it's a business. I get it. You want to make money. You want to sell tickets. They will put someone on a show for the sole purpose of the fact that they sell tickets. Not in the sense that they're a draw, but that they sell tickets to their friends and family. And if you book this person on the show, that's good for maybe 6 to 10 tickets sold.
And but that can only go so far. If you start, you do a show a month, maybe you should do a show every couple months, probably better. But you start running a show every 2 weeks or so, those people are going to get burned out, and you got to have something more to your product than just, hey, this person's on it.
Yeah. I mean, they get exposed very quickly. It alienates a lot of the people that are paying their dues and putting their time in, that are getting overlooked over someone like that. It causes a lot of problems. But again, I get why promoters do it.
So for the tax time promoter, we got a guy that'll come in. He's going to play all this money down. And then, depending on the talent he's got, he decides that, you know what? It's not as much money as I really thought I was going to make. Pie in the sky, or my favorite, I want this to be the next ECW. And I don't know why anybody ever says that, because ECW was a very specific set of circumstances. And the only reason why a lot of shit worked was because Philly is full of filthy animals. And I'll say that every time. Philadelphia is full of filthy animals. And that's the only reason why half of it worked. Half of it lasted as long as it did, but for people only see the end of it. They don't see the beginning, and they never paid attention to the middle, but they have like this, this idea of what ECW was, and like, that's exactly what I want, ECW, and that's what this promotion is going to be. And I see it every time as even better for the guys that book old ECW guys. I'm like, yeah.
Well, and ECW was famously a financial failure.
Right.
Paul Heyman, owed so many people so much money at the end. If you're a businessman, I wouldn't use that as your example. Use something a little more credible or a little more financially successful to base your business model off of.
I mean, for a tax time promoter, you could say like there was one guy who did book an ECW original, Balls Mahoney, and he did not get paid. And there was a video for the longest time of him going to the promoter's house in the middle of the night, banging on the door.
Yeah. So let's talk about this promoter. And so this is going to be a little bit of a long story because this guy has a lot of history. So buckle in. So the promoter's name is Joe Rogers. Let's just call him out. He's a piece of shit. He's an idiot. No one likes him. This was like the mid 2000s. I don't remember the exact years, maybe around like 2005, 2006. I don't know. I know it was during MySpace. I know that much. And I remember that there was, I had a few friends that were telling me that they got booked on this show. I think it was in Ohio, where, there's this person that's starting a new, promotion. They're bringing in all of these names. Balls Mahoney is one of them, and I was very skeptical of it. Nothing good comes from a promotion just popping up overnight. That is a red flag, and I've seen that over the years. I've been around long enough to see that, and still to this day, all someone has to say is, "Hey, I'm running a show," or "Hey, I'm starting a promotion," and without doing any research or asking any questions about, "Hey, what is this product? What are your finances? What is your vision?" Any questions that someone smart would ask, they just jump in and say, "Hey, I want to work this promotion. I want to be your, I want to be your booker. I want to be your champion." And this was true then. And what Mr. Rogers famously did during this show was he left during intermission with the cash box from the ticket gate, and no one got paid. I might be thinking of a different show, but I think Billy Gunn was on that one also. And they just decided in the back that, you know what, we're going to give the fans, because they paid their money, even though we're not going to get ours. They paid their money, and we're still going to put on a show for them. And a lot of times when the promoter screws talent out of money, whether they say, "Sorry, I don't have enough money to pay you," or they leave during intermission with the money, or if they try to get everyone in the locker room to chip in to pay the doctor for the event. You know which one I'm talking about there. The wrestlers still feel an obligation to put on a show for the fans, because the fans are the ones that paid their money, and they don't want them to feel ripped off, even though the wrestlers themselves got ripped off. So this was a pretty famous story for a while, and he kind of disappeared off the grid. And I was surprised to hear in I want to say maybe it was 2009 that he had resurfaced. He'd started a promotion called 5-Star Wrestling, and he got this guy. He was a friend of mine, Tony Hansen, to be his booker. And I knew what had happened with him before. I also knew that Tony at that point had been in the business for less than a year.
Yeah, he was really green, wasn't he?
He was very green. He had not worked outside of one single promotion during that time, and that also seemed like a red flag that the person would approach him and say, "Hey, you're the person that I want to be my booker. You're the person that I want to control my company. You're the person that I trust in this," with not really any kind of proven track record. So I was friends with Tony. We played poker a lot. We went to the casino a lot at that point, and I didn't want him to get taken advantage of. He showed me the money for the show. Like, Joe had given him the entire talent budget. He showed it to me in person, laid the bills out in front of me, so I knew, okay, anyone that works this show is going to get paid for it. So I agreed to work the show. I agreed to help him out with booking the show to make sure that he wouldn't get taken advantage of. And as we got closer to the show, talking to him and talking to Joe a little more, I became a little more trusting. Big mistake on my part, and I agreed to come on as a booker for the promotion. I will say that the show that he ran, that first show, was great. It was a success. I don't know how much money he made, or if he ended up losing anything, but everyone got paid. Everyone was happy at the end. Great.
So it sounded like he had turned it around.
And that's, as you'll see, is kind of his history. It's kind of like a roller coaster where you're climbing up to the top slowly, not knowing that you're going to plummet down at 60 miles an hour. So there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes for the next show. He was booking Sean Waltman. Negotiations fell through there. He blamed it on Waltman, and I tend to believe that it was maybe Joe's doing that those talks fell through. And then he booked Brutus Beefcake, and he even put down a deposit on Beefcake. He paid for his plane ticket and hotel. He paid for half of his negotiated rate for working the show. So a lot of the money was already put into that. There were a lot of issues with him getting a ring, because for the first ring he rented a ring from another worker, and personally he got a really shit deal out of it, where he had to basically rent by the hour and paid more than a fair price for a ring rental. So he was trying to get his own ring. He was trying to work with Bubba Brewer, who used to promote in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Punxsutawney. And up until like a week before the show, he was supposed to get that ring from Bubba. Him getting the ring ended up falling through for some reason, and then very quickly after that, he panicked and decided that he was quitting the business. He took the coward's way out and just went completely dark. He went off the grid, and left it to me and Tony to call and cancel all of the talent and say, hey, this guy just decided to peace out and leave us to clean up his mess. You know, having to call and cancel Beefcake, he was pissed. I would be too, but at least he got most of his money. He was still sitting on a plane ticket that hopefully he had a chance to reuse. I called a lot of the guys and said, "Hey, here's what's going on." A lot of them said, "Well, are you still going to run the show?" And after talking to enough people, we decided, you know what, let's just put on a damn show. Some of the guys were canceled. Some of the guys agreed to work for less money. I didn't have any financial stake in this. I was just helping with the booking. But we ended up putting on that show, and I know that Tony ended up losing a lot of money, despite some of the guys offering to donate their pay for the show. But Tony ended up losing some money. And then that motherfucker, Joe Rogers, goes on Facebook and takes a picture that someone took from the event. They showed like the ring in the crowd. He posted that to his own social media and took credit for the success of that show. And he claims, oh well, the boys did it. Yeah, the boys did it because you were a coward and you decided that you didn't want to be in the business. And then he pops up like 6 months later, running 5-Star Wrestling again, and this would continue on a cycle for years. Every time that tax season would come around, he would decide, you know what, I'm going to start running again. He would run maybe 1 or 2 shows, and then he would screw everyone over, and he would go through a different roster, a different booker, every time until the well just dried up. He resurfaced a few years ago under a different name, and I very quickly found out that it was him and made sure that everyone that was jumping to work for this red flag new promotion knew what they were getting into. And surprise, surprise, he 100% quit the business again, selling his ring, selling his frog machine, because he didn't have the best grammar, and that was a good running joke for a while. And apparently, he's trying to run again in 2023. This is I think this is the most extreme example, because a lot of the people
it really is. It really is.
Yeah, the people that want to run around tax time, they'll do a show, maybe 1 or 2. They'll realize that they're losing money, and they'll say, okay, well, I got in over my head. And yes, oftentimes the wrestlers are a victim of that, because they end up getting screwed out of money that they were promised. But in this case, this guy is just a serial piece of shit. I mean, this is, he's repeating the cycle over and over again, thinking that he's going to get a different result, and he doesn't. And yes, this is the most extreme example, but
I mean,
it's probably the most famous in our area.
Right. There were times I remember, like, he lost a building because he actually canceled a show and didn't tell the building he was canceling the show. And then I recall another time where he canceled a show well within, like, there was enough time to cancel the show. And then, like, maybe a week or 2, because he canceled, said, I've got to get out of this. I got to take care of my family. And then, like, a week or 2 before, like, the scheduled show date, he's like, I'm going to come back to wrestling again and run another show. I'm like, that lasted, like, maybe a month. And it was, like, all kinds of mixed messaging. And it's certainly a red flag for workers to look out for. I mean, if there was, like, a guy that had been involved with a promotion or several promotions, and they say that they want to start their own, like, where that person's been. You know what they've seen. Sure, there are challenges. I'm not saying everything is going to be all right, but at least somebody that's been in the business and understands that there are those challenges to overcome. And like you said, when you get somebody brand new out of left field, all of a sudden comes in and it's like, hey, I'm starting a promotion here. you got to be a little cautious.
Yeah. Well, and for as long as Joe's been running this scheme of his, this scam, as long as he's been building up this reputation and people know who he is, they know about his history, and they know exactly what's going to happen to them if they take this booking, he still somehow finds people that are willing to work for him. And that's as much on the wrestlers as it is the promoter, because oftentimes you'll get people that are starting out new, that they're just trying to get reps in, they're just trying to work shows. Maybe they're taking a calculated risk, knowing that they're going into this, they're probably not going to get paid, but they are going to get experience. Or, maybe they were promised that they're going to get to work a big name. Or more often than not, you get the people that simply aren't getting booked anywhere. They've been out of business for a few years because no one will book them, and hey, this is the chance for my big comeback. They burn their bridges elsewhere, or just they just simply couldn't cut it in the business, and this is just their shortcut to pretending that they're a professional wrestler. And that I think is the biggest example of what we see when these people support these types of promoters.
All right, 1 minute left in our time on this. Any closing remarks? Anything you want to send us out with?
I mean, I know that we've talked a lot of bad examples. There are good ones. There are people that, again, that approach this with good intentions. There are people that have maybe lost money, broken even, or made a little and said, okay, this is what I got into. This is what I expected, and maybe they call it quits after one, or maybe they go on to be a success and run regularly after that. That's not always the case. That's not always the scenario. But I think if you're a professional wrestler, you owe it to yourself to do the research on who you're wrestling for. I think that is the lesson to learn at the end of the day.
Awesome. Well, sir, thank you so much for joining me here today. Hopefully, you do well in your future endeavors as well. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you again soon.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. Thanks to Mr. Bennett for joining us here tonight. As always, please your thoughts and criticism down below. This show is going to evolve as it goes on. We hope to. That's the plan. So there'll be some changes, all for the better, I hope. The idea is to help out and really put a light on some things that either should change, need to change, some things that do well, or what have you. Maybe just glean some insight. So that's at least one of the things we're working on here. So thanks. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're going to keep this on the IDS video channel for now. Not sure if it's going to get its own channel in the future, but we'll see what happens. As always, thanks for joining us. Have a good night.